Fantastic. All righty. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of One Plus One, your place for inconvenient truth-telling and myth-busting. It's our first show of the new season. I think season 4, season 5. Going to go and check. And who better to have on this edition of One Plus One, especially on Black History Month, than Renee Johnston. Renee is an educator, activist, and is a new member of the Black Power Media family, which is news commentary and analysis from a Black left perspective. And we're here to talk about some of the issues affecting Black America, as well as the rest of the working class, as well as the awful presidential race that's going to come between Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers, Trump Biden. So let's
isn't it terrible? It's terrible.
So
it
first
really
off,
is
Renee,
terrible.
Thank you for coming on the program. It's an honor to have you on.
Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
It's an honor to have you. And let's before I start this first question, what your reflections on this upcoming horror show between Biden and Trump.
I literally can't wait for it to be done. I'm like, is it November? What would it be, like November 6th or 8th, 7th, 8th, whatever the day is going to be? That's the day after
exactly
elections. I'm like, I'm ready for that day to come.
Yeah, in fact, somebody was asking me, somebody was like saying, "Hey, Youri, you do like a journalism program on YouTube. Like, what's your thoughts on the whole, Trump v. Biden?" And for me, it's like, well, one of the good things about doing this is that like I set like my own schedule and I can cover like what I want to cover. I feel bad for your comrades at Black Power Media and anyone else whose job it is to cover this race amongst other issues. But if you're an American outlet, you have to cover this, and I just feel so bad for people that have to cover this race. But it's like, do yourself a favor.
I almost wonder if the energy would not be, and I know this is certainly what we've been trying to do. If the energy is not better spent looking at the people who are actually in line with the needs of the US population, right? Like, I'd much rather spend my time talking about Claudia de la Cruz and Karina Garcia, Jill Stein, for all the issues that I have with how Dr. West has run his campaign. For the most part, I'm in deep agreement with the policies and things that are important to him, so, and I feel like that's part of the problem, right? Like, the grand scheme of mainstream media is to guide the US population into this lull and to completely encapsulate them in nonsense, right? So the focus is, oh, what's Trump doing? And did Biden fall asleep? And, like all these things that in the end really don't have any they'll never have any actual positive impact on the material conditions of regular people. So one of my goals is going to be to not spend a whole lot of time talking about foolishness, but instead, to really try and guide people towards actual organizing means of creating opportunities to improve their own material conditions. Because I feel like they're never going to get that from mainstream media, right?
Exactly.
Like, you can go on any show and listen to people talk about Trump and Biden, but you're never going to go on a show and hear people talk about, like, what's this community doing to get ballot access? What's this community doing in order to guide people to understanding what policies really have an impact? Like, that's the stuff that to me is more important. So I know, like, for certain, that's what I'll be that's what we'll be talking about on Saturdays. I'm not.
That's a perfect segue then to my first official question, which is, now many people who watch Black Power Media, we know you through your work at Black Power Media. You're part of that fantastic group of Black leftists, and you're one of the people who I mean, we all, I'll just say that, like, I do love and respect Dr. Cornel West, and if somebody, slips him a copy of the show, we would love to have him on to talk about, all of the different, all of the important topics which I know he's addressing. But what I liked about when you joined Black Power Media was you were actually quite critical of Dr. Cornel West. So share with us your criticisms of share with us your criticisms of Dr. West, and then we can talk about some of the dynamics that's going on in the Green Party with Dr. Jill Stein, who was trying to get nomination again.
Right. So the initial announcement of Dr. West running, which was that he was going to be running under the People's Party, immediately set my hackles up, because my own personal experience within that organization, which is not a political party, barely set up to be a PAC, always running in the negative with money, always promising and not delivering on things. My initial thought was, why on earth would you be signing on to run a campaign with this group of people? Especially given the experience that the Black volunteers had within the organization when I was a part of it, what happened after I was no longer a part of the organization and seemed to like recycle and happen again to a new set of Black volunteers. There was just so much messiness, and I couldn't for the life of me understand, like, why would you want, as a person who is going to run for a presidential seat, why would you want to be doing that under the guise of this like grift, basically, of an organization?
And if you had seen the red flags being in an organization, somebody like Cornel West should have also seen some red flags. And
right, and especially since he was an advisor for the organization, it's not like he was completely removed from the People's Party. He was one of their like celebrity advisor council people. And I know we had attempted, when I was part of the organization, to communicate with him. It didn't work. I know that the volunteers who followed up and tried to kind of, keep the Black voters of People's Party going attempted to meet with him. It didn't work. So I felt very much like anything he didn't fully understand about the organization was in part because he chose not to do anything to understand those things, because all he had to do was accept a meeting, right? Like, all he had to do was read one of the emails we sent him, or check out the website that we, like, literally a group of ex-volunteers created to kind of lay all the stuff out. Like, all of this information was readily available, and he had clearly not attempted, or if he did, he ignored whatever information he was provided. So to me, that was a massive red flag, right? So, you move on, a few people are at like questioning this decision, and then all of a sudden he's having meetings and he's going to run with the Green Party.
yeah,
And for me, I was like, okay, well, what's going on? Like, you're super smart. Like, you're just jumping from opportunity to opportunity. Like, somebody called you and you decided to run for president, and then that got shaky, so you decided you're going to run with a different group. And then I don't even know how many weeks later he was going to run as an independent, and he wasn't going to run with the Green Party anymore. So now we have another shift of someone clearly like in his ear saying, well, maybe you shouldn't do this thing. So now he's running independent. And then he finds that, then all of a sudden it's, oh, well, we realize we can't get on the ballot in everywhere as an independent, which like that should not have been.
Yeah, in
right.
fact,
That shouldn't have been news to anybody. And now he's starting a party, but you're starting a party and saying like you're going to do this thing because you need to be part of a party, but the reason you left the Green Party was because you wanted to be an independent and you wouldn't want to be beholden to a political group. So he just, to me, is all over the place. And although a lot of the things that he speaks on, I'm in full agreement with, and I've read some of his books and I respect him greatly, deeply as like an academic and all of those things. I just feel like he's not serious. And I've gotten a lot of gaff for it. Like people, they're not happy, but I've also gotten a few like, Renee, you were right. My fault. Like,
Well, in fact,
sorry.
in fact, you know, uh, whatever criticisms people have about the Green Party of the Green Party of America, I never understood why people, why people who claim that they want to vote for a third party, they want to build up a third alternative left party. I never understood why they didn't just join the Green Party, because the Green Party, for the most part, does have ballot access. They know the election routine cycle, and they know all of the
And they exist. I mean, not for nothing. And I have my own concerns as a registered like member of the Green Party with how things work. But I mean, there are people who are sitting members of political seats as Green Parties, and not like two or three. It's like 100 and something. Now, are they more? They're all local seats. There's nobody on the federal level yet. All those things. True, but it exists. It's existed for decades now, right? Like, and I agree with you. I feel like a lot of times people who have these conversations about the Green Party and, well, what are they doing in between and this, that, and the third, like, get involved, right? Like if you,
exactly.
it's quite easy to stand on the outside and complain and, nitpick and say one thing of, whatever your impression or idea or whatever about the Green Party is. But if you have a legitimate gripe with the duopoly, then it would make sense to join a political party that's already working outside of that duopoly. Now, people will.
And for me, and for me, it doesn't make any sense that Dr. Cornel West would abandon the Green Party to be an independent when, I mean, it just speaks for itself how much
Right. And
that just
especially
does
now
not
that
make
he's
any
decided
sense.
he's going to start, he's going to now start a party. I mean, you thought it was too much work to be in a established political party that already runs candidates, already has ballot access in multiple states. That was too much work for you. But starting a party is not too much work. Like
I mean, all he had to do and all he had to do from what Dr. Stein has said, from what John Mubaraka has said to Black Power Media and to other outlets, was that, like, look, all he had to do was just meet with local Green Party members from all
right.
these different states, run a primary, because you're part of a party. You don't just get anointed as a
Right.
nomination because
And
you
there
are.
and there are multiple candidates. It's not, there are multiple people vying for the candidacy from the Green Party. Um, I suspect Jill Stein will win. That's just my guess. I don't, I like Davi very much. I think personally, like he's got a really good idea about true, like what true democracy could look like with everyone having a voice. I don't quite know that the US population is ready for Davi. Um, I that's just my opinion on it. I could be wrong. Like who knows what'll happen, right? We could certainly do worse than a person who truly cares about like the earth and and the environment and truly cares about people. Jasmine Sherman is running. I don't particularly agree with her thoughts on the death penalty, but outside of that, she has a really strong platform. So, and I think there's someone else. I feel bad because I don't fully know all the people who are running. I think there might be someone else who's running for the Green Party line. But the reality is, like Jill Stein's the known entity. Um, so I suspect that in the end she'll be the candidate. That's just my gut. But I
In fact,
it's so
yeah,
no, go
go
ahead.
ahead. No,
No, it's okay, go.
yeah. In fact, I mean, I like Dr. Jill Stein as well, and open invite to her and her representatives to come on the program to discuss, why she wants to try, third time in a row being, being the nominee of the Green Party. My only problem with Dr. Jill Stein is, and look, I have nothing but respect for her, and I'll always defend her against any of the smears that are leveled against her. But this is like her third time running for the Green Party nomination, and for me, I just feel if I was a member of the Green Party, I would, like you've already tried twice. Let somebody else, get the nomination, and even if the Greens don't even stand a chance of unseating, Democrats and Republicans, it is important that the Greens do get federal funding for the next election cycle so that they can strengthen the party. And I just feel that the public at large already knows Dr. Jill Stein, and some of them unfortunately do fall for a lot of the baseless smears and slander that's been leveled against her. So I would just if I was a member of the Green Party and the Green Party advisor, I would just think that it would be much better to let somebody else try to get the nomination. Yes, they're going to have to deal with a lot of the ridiculous smears and talking points that all the other Green Party members have already said, have already dealt with. But that's just my opinion. I'm curious your thoughts on that when it comes to Jill Stein running again.
Yeah, I'm actually in agreement with you. I was not I part of my concern with the Green Party is this like every 4 year attempt to like become a thing that's widely known. And I've always been of the mind that like if you're not doing the on the ground work in between these every 4 year political campaigns for presidency, I don't know how much of a base you're really growing
Mm-hmm.
to do something that can actually work every fourth year, right? Um, so in New Jersey, it's a pretty active group, right? They participate in a lot of things. They hold meetings, they hold committee meetings. All the state meetings are public. Um, they're really working to kind of be a thing in New Jersey. And it's not easy, right? Like it's not an easy task. Like people sign up and it sounds like a good idea, like, oh, I'll join the Green Party, but because it's not like a widespread easy thing, it means doing work, right? Like it actually means like planning things and having events and bringing people in and tabling and signature collection and all these things that are really not fun, like not for nothing but talking to strangers about their political leanings and why they shouldn't be voting for this thing, that this duopoly that's in existence, is not an easy conversation because people don't really want to have it, right? Like a lot of people are not interested in having this discourse. But the work needs to get done. Like it has to happen if this system is going to break in any way, even it's going to crack even a little bit, it's going to be because the work that people do on the ground. I don't know that a lot of states are doing what New Jersey's doing, and we're not a huge group of people,
Mm.
but we're a committed group of people. So it works in that sense that we actually do the things, right? But I don't know how many places have a group that actually wants it to work. So that's where you have the problem is, you know, how many other states are doing this level of work. Like the Philadelphia Green Party, I know is pretty, pretty active, but I don't know where else in Pennsylvania. Like, Pennsylvania is massive. Like that's
Yeah.
not a small state, right? New York is very active. Baltimore is very active. So, I can pick out a bunch of separate places, but having like a really big spread across ground movement, I don't think it's there yet. And I question, between these runs that Jill has had, where has the work gone in between to make that groundswell happen? And so for me, I just feel like maybe if there had been more work in between, right? Like it wouldn't feel like such a daunting thing now that we're, as a party, they're still trying to get federal funding. They're still trying to get to 5%. I mean, it was trying to get to 5% in 2016. It's been a long time, right? Like, and that was as close as they'd gotten, I think, since, because I don't,
Yeah.
I can't think of another campaign through the Green Party that got that close, and I could be wrong. It might just be me not knowing the full history of it. But so I want there to be more, right? Like I want there to be like this full-fledged ground effort to build the party with actual people who can do the work so that when this 4-year campaign comes, you have a base of people who can actually assist with the campaign being somewhat successful, even if it's not to topple it, to at least provide enough noise and enough people and enough presentation that it can't be ignored, because that's essentially what ends up happening is like, the Green Party kind of gets tossed to the side and people are like, whatever, they run every 4 years, but when do you see them otherwise? And that's how we end up in this constant like 4-year cycle.
In fact, that's a perfect segue then to yeah, that's a perfect segue to what are your thoughts on the other left party for Socialism and Liberation, and the campaign of Claudia de la Cruz, and I believe her running mate is Karina Gold, right?
Garcia, I think.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Karina Garcia, and
Mhm.
yeah, and talk, yeah. So talk to us about their campaign. What you're impressed with them, and why do you think other left-leaning outlets aren't, of aren't covering their campaign? Because I'm quite impressed with their platform. I've been quite impressed with their appearances on Black Power Media. So yeah, talk to us about their campaign.
So I am thoroughly impressed with them. Thoroughly impressed with them.
Yeah.
Um, I went to the campaign launch in Newark a couple of weeks ago and got to meet both Claudia and Karina in person. They are as lovely as they are like on screen. Um, they're very, they're very powerful in the sense of when both, and this is both of them, like people mostly see Claudia because she's a presidential campaign. She's a presidential candidate. But they both have a presence that you can tell is truly rooted in just wanting things to be right. Right.
Yes. Yeah.
I firmly
Exactly.
believe that like no matter what else comes out of whatever happens, there's no doubt in my mind that they are sincere in their desire to break capitalism and to make things better for people, right? For regular working people. Um, I find PSL to be interesting. I don't know a whole lot about the actual party or the actual organization. I do know that it's rooted in socialist learning and political education. And one of the things that I'm very impressed by is when I get emails from PSL or from the campaign, it always links to political education stuff. Like, here's a reading you can do. Here's a thing you can watch. Here's something you can learn about. And you never see that in campaign emails. Like, literally never have I ever seen that in political campaign emails.
So with all
And
so with all due respect to the party that you are a member of, the Green Party, there's not a lot of talking about political education, which
correct.
which 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 even our own people power movement does need. It's
Right.
political education, because
Right. And
we still have people who think that NATO is a force for good in the world and don't even understand all of the complications when it comes to their respective electoral systems. So
right, right. And so, one of the goals I know for PSL and Claudia and Karina is to get people to understand what socialism actually is, right? Like, what does it actually mean to live in a socialist society? What does socialism do for society? What are the different ways that if we were part of a socialist society, it could mean for an actual improvement to the material conditions of regular working people. And so I I almost wish that PSL and Green Party could like merge in some way, so that PSL can gain some of like I guess like the general like growth that the Green Party has gotten over time, and the ballot access and all these things, and that Green Party could gain from PSL like this real like working people on the ground ability to bring people together. When you go to these marches, PSL is always involved in one way or another, right? Like I show up in DC and the PSL person rolls up and they've got 8,000 signs to hand out to people. And, here's something that, you can follow and read. And here's how you can get involved. And that's the work that I think Green Party needs to do in order to grow on the ground. So, it's odd to be, and I hope I don't get myself in trouble because it occurred to me that I I'm not really good at like pretending that I don't have like my truth is what it is, right? And so
Yeah.
it gets me in trouble a lot to just kind of be like, well, this is just the reality of the situation. I really like what PSL is doing, but I'm not a member of PSL, and it's because like that type of organization with the level of um involvement they really need for you to have with the reading and the meetings and all those things, it's hard for me to do because of all the other things that I have going on. So I've never sought to be a part of PSL. um that said, it's probably an awesome organization to be a part of because of
Yeah.
all the things they do. And Green Party is a little less strenuous, right? But it should probably be more strenuous in order to be a little more like PSL. So it's an awkward position to be in because I really support what they're doing, and I think they're doing a phenomenal job of like getting people on the ground and really getting the masses to rise up behind Palestine. Like I just that work needs to get done, and unfortunately like Green Party's not at the forefront of doing that work. Now they're involved, right? And anytime there's a march or something happening, our state rep reaches out and says, okay, I mean, he's like driving to DC regularly to make sure that Green Party in New Jersey is involved in these things. Um, Dr. Stein speaks a lot at different events, all these things, but I can't say that we're like the guiding force behind these things happening. Now, there is a group that's trying, that is, they've been meeting and saying, we've got to do more. We've got to be more in the forefront. How can we get more like eyes on the fact that the Green Party cares about these things? So we'll see like how this all pans out, down the line. But for right now, that's just not, it's just simply not what people think of when they think of Green Party. Like if you think of PSL, like here's a march coming, right? That's something coming up. And it's just not where Green Party is right now. So
Well, speaking of political education, and we welcome any representatives of the Green Party if they want to respond to that, they're more than welcome to. But speaking of the need for political education, that's a perfect segue to RFK Jr. And I have to ask this question, which is, I remember asking you this before, but we have to ask this again, which is why are so many supposedly left-leaning people supporting RFK Jr.'s independent bid for the presidency when and I've tried to I've tried to listen to several of his interviews, but really in the end of the day my conclusion about RFK is that apart from Ukraine, and he is very good on Ukraine wanting to de-escalate the war, wanting to end that cluster F of a situation, but apart from that, like I just don't see what in his program is like Bernie Sanders or like Dennis Kucinich or even like Ralph Nader, if there was like if he did have a program like that, okay, I could understand like why a lot of like left-leaning people and anti-imperialists would be supportive of him. But again, apart from that one issue, I don't see why people why so many left-leaning folks are propping him up. Can you explain?
I mean, I don't know if I can really explain it, but if you are a grifter, which a lot of these people are, they're all grifters, then it is much easier to get behind the independent campaign that is raising a lot of money and trying to utilize that to the benefit of your grift. I mean, these people don't care about political education. They don't care about Palestine. They don't care about they honestly don't even really care about Ukraine outside of like it's a good excuse to pretend like they're against empire, right? They don't care about ending capitalism because they're all making money off of capitalism and fully embedded in that system. They probably don't even really care about Kennedy, to be honest, except, he's raising millions of dollars. He's paying his staffers a lot of money. And if you're a grifter and, you can get some more people on your side by, signing on with the anti-vaccine Kennedy, like, just saying, like, who, like,
In
that's what you're
fact,
gonna do.
in fact, and I hope YouTube doesn't censor us for for talking about vaccines or anything like that. But although we're not really going to talk about vaccines, but for me, like, ugh, yes, and yes, it's dangerous to raise this. But basically, this is basically like what happened with so many left-leaning folks was. I don't know what it was about COVID that like messed up a lot of people's brains, but a lot of people's brains did get messed up on COVID, and and for me, like that's basically RFK Jr.'s shtick is a lot of people are still stuck in that like pandemic thing of they don't trust like the vaccine, blah 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 blah, and so for like that. RFK Jr. is raising this, and because like he says one or two good things about Ukraine, they're they're supporting his campaign, and for
Right.
lack of a better word, let's just call these people the Jimmy Dore left and whatnot. And
Mm-hmm.
you're
Mm-hmm.
yeah you're and
It's I like to call them the YouTube circle jerk. Which will
very
probably
much
get me
so,
in
very
trouble,
much so.
but
And like I don't even want to like open up the whole debate on is the were the vaccines safer or not. But let's just look at like RFK Jr.'s actual platform. And again, like apart from that one issue which seems to unite some people on the left, but basically libertarians, I don't see what like RFK Jr. has to like offer people. Because and if you are a leftist or if you are left leaning, I'm sorry, what's RFK Jr. offering about like college, education, healthcare that you can compare to Bernie Sanders, Ralph Nader, or even Dennis Kucinich, and why he was part of RFK Jr.'s like campaign is beyond my comprehension, because there was nothing on like foreign policy or even domestic policy in which I could say, oh yeah, you can get behind RFK Jr. even if you're not 100% on board with like his like anti-vax policies. And I'm curious your response to that, right?
so when he first announced, my mother heard him speaking somewhere, and I don't even, this was so long ago, I can't even remember what the conversation was. And so I went to the page to read what is he campaigning on? Like what's his shtick? What's gonna happen? And he is he is a supporter of policing. And he thinks reform is a thing. He his ideas on relieving the American population of the immense debt that only seems to exist here was not impressive to me. Um, and he was also he didn't seem to have a firm grasp on like race, right? Like he has like this whole like kumbaya idea about racism. And again, this was like a long time ago so I don't know if there's been any change to his platform or whatever have you, because I simply don't follow him. So I was immediately like, nope, he's off my list, right? I have no interest in this campaign at all. And then to me, he has a tendency to like hit on all the points that I find a lot of like reactionary white people are concerned about. And so once I put you in the reactionary white person category, like I just forget it.
Exactly.
And then he turned out, on top of all things, to be this massive Zionist who like doesn't care about death of Palestinian people, doesn't care about stealing the Palestinian lands, doesn't care, like none of it. And so, for me, that is a line in the stand that if you are truly on the left, and in my estimation, this term being a leftist is like way overused and it's too broad, and people can just call themselves a leftist without having any actual like leftist views. um so this idea that like these leftist people are all behind you, they're not leftists. If you are behind a person who does not care about the death of the Palestinian people, does not care about the plight of the Palestinian people, doesn't even mention all of the other genocides and terror that's happening in the world. He doesn't care about the Congo. He doesn't care about the Sahel. I don't think I've ever heard him say a word about Haiti. Like nothing to my knowledge about Guyana and Venezuela, and the fact that the U.S. is creating this issue in that region over Essequibo just so that they can create an area, an issue in the area. Like none of these conversations are happening amongst these people. And so for me, you don't care about the fact that empire is the problem. You don't care about the fact that capitalism is the problem. You don't care about the fact that imperialism is the problem. And therefore, I have no interest in having any conversation with you about you running for president, because you are no different than what we already have, right? Like him
Exactly.
running as an independent just means that he's going to run as an independent. And then if he managed to win, we're still going to end up with the same shitty policies that we are living under now, because he's no different than the duopoly, which is why he started out as a Democrat. Like, you know, I just,
Exactly.
I got nothing. I got no reason at all why anybody would be behind him, outside of their reactionary who wants to claim that they want to break the duopoly, but they don't really want to break the system. They just want to get behind a reactionary who's not part of the duopoly.
And would you and two final things on RFK Jr. Would you say that he's regressive on everything, especially Palestine? Because we always hear
Ah,
that term, like the progressive socialist liberal on everything except Palestine. But I sometimes say, like like a lot of those people are regressive on everything, especially Palestine. Would you say RFK
right.
Jr. fits that bill?
Absolutely. And you can't, if you are regressive on Palestine, you can't be progressive about anything, right? Like, how can you be
Those days are
progressive
done.
about,
Exactly.
right? Like, how, right?
Those days of even excusing those kind of like
Yeah.
leftists, like it's over.
Yeah. There's no crossing that line in a way that you can make sense of it, right? If you don't see the problem of imperialism and empire and colonialism and racism and white supremacy and all those things, and how they work against the best interest, and in fact in support of killing off an entire population of people, then you can't be progressive about anything, because you don't even get the problem.
Exactly. Exactly. but why do you think I mean, final question on the RFK Jr. is do you like I'm trying to understand where a lot of the reactionary politics of of supposedly leftist folks are coming from, and maybe and I'll try to attempt to do it. Like, do you think a lot of it has to do with the fact that so many people were disappointed in Bernie Sanders when he ended up sheepdogging a lot of people to the Democrats, when he showed his own limitations when it came to imperialism and so forth, that a lot of people, and there was a similar thing happening with Jeremy Corbyn when he didn't stand up for a lot of the Palestine justice folks, including many who were Jewish anti-Zionists. So what you get is people. So then what happens is people get very angry, and but instead of using their platform or their energy to just to just support leftist movements, they end up just becoming so angry that they end up starts excusing a lot of reactionary politics of the far right, and you see like a lot of leftists are even playing footsie with the far right. Some of them of course engage in transphobia. A lot of them got went down that rabbit hole of it should be a choice. It should be a choice. A lot of them went down that rabbit hole of the whole vaccine stuff and anti-lockdown stuff. So yeah, so I'm curious your response to that.
So I think in my mind, even if you for a split second when Bernie first announced said, "Oh, I'm going to go with Bernie." If you're capable of being reactionary now, supporting Bernie was the fluke, not supporting Kennedy. Right? Kennedy is what you wanted. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't and I have my own, and I was when Bernie first announced, I don't want to make any statements that would make people perceive otherwise. I was fully on board, right? Like I was like, yes, let's do the thing. But I also did the same thing when Obama first announced. I was like, oh yes, let's do the thing. And what you find is all of these campaigns all start with trying to convince you that they're going to be different. And then when you really start peeling back the layers of the campaign, you realize that they're really not different enough than what we're already getting, right? Like they may give you a little bit of, something to make you think that it's going to be like this big change from what is already in existence. But in the end, they, for the most part, end up just being another politician who's actually completely line in step with the nonsense that we're already living with. And so, so I don't know that these people are actually like reacting out of anger because they are disappointed in how like Bernie Sanders's campaign. I think they're grifters. And in the moment that Bernie Sanders announced and became popular and was raising a lot of money and got this groundswell, they saw an opportunity to jump on and be like, oh, we'll jump on with Bernie because he's getting a lot of followers. And if we talk about Bernie, we'll get their money and this, that, the other thing. And, it wasn't really about Bernie Sanders, right? Like it wasn't really about
Interesting.
what things could have come out of his campaign had he actually been like a legitimate socialist who was interested in pursuing and pushing for a socialist society. And so what you're really seeing is people who were mad that grift didn't work and they had to find another grift and find another grift to make money off of, because these people don't care. Like they don't care about the plight of the regular person. So, and I hopefully don't get you in too much trouble, but like for all of everybody's conversations about what a great like working class supporter and voice for the people Jimmy Dore is, he is a millionaire boss who does not give a shit about regular people, right? So he is going to go with whatever thing is going to get super chats, donations, subs, like that's what he cares about. Same thing with Hinkle. Same thing. Like there's so many of them. And their goal out of all of this is to make money. And once your goal is about making money, it's never actually about presenting truth. It's never actually about improving material conditions of regular people. It's never actually about, you know, actual political education. It's about getting people angry and getting people fired up and getting people to give you money. That's what it's about. And so, you know, I think even giving them the credit of, you know, they were so in line with Bernie and he was such a disappointment that, you know, they ended up going the opposite direction is giving them too much credit. It was always about grifting. And Bernie was a positive grift in the moment. And when Bernie turned tail and did what politicians tend to do, you know, he was no longer a worthy thing to grift off of. So they had to go find something else.
Unbelievable. But then that means, this gets into the heart of, political education, and how does the movement advance, how does the people power movement advance itself? And we once talked about how some, in radical spaces, radical, leftists who don't believe in, reforming the system, they don't want to engage in that, in sort of campaigns like, why don't we amend the 13th Amendment and get rid of that loophole that causes all of us to be in the new Jim Crow when, heaven forbid, we're stopped over by the police because of a broken tail light, or because we had a little bit of, pot or whatever drugs, like, in our pockets. But thinking about, the Green Party for Socialism and Liberation, don't don't some who are involved in radical spaces, the radical, leftists, the radical black leftists, and the Latinx counterpart, the queer counterparts, and the indigenous counterpart, shouldn't we, even if it may not be, really sexy, but shouldn't we be involved in things like constitutional reforms where we get money out of politics, where we repeal corporate personhoods, and we get people elected whose campaign is, all of those important, stuff that I just mentioned, like getting, like amending the 13th Amendment, stopping that loophole, and, and whatnot.
Well, yeah. Yeah, we should.
In short, yes.
In short, yeah. It's and we have this, this is my conundrum, right? I talk about this all the time on Saturdays. How do you get people to invest in participating in a system that they're well aware exists only to prevent them from getting anything out of that system, right? Like how do you convince a group of working class minority people who are already oppressed that, like, don't listen to the capitalist who's trying to convince you that you can work hard enough and become a millionaire, but listen to me and understand that the system is actually set up to prevent that from happening. And in order for you to stop that from being a thing, you have to come read with me and come talk with me and come talk to other people and, figure out how we fight to break the system as it is so that it could actually work for regular people when the entire system is built not only to prevent that, but to actively work against you doing it, right? Because working against the system puts you in a really bad predicament, right? Like it means for the most part, you are in danger. Right? Like you're asking a lot of people. You're asking people to speak up about a thing that could eventually cost your job. It could cost your housing. It could cost your ability to like be free, right? It could cost your ability to live literally because that has happened all the time. Like it is not a, it's a lot to take on. And it's a lot to ask someone else to take on. And it is a lot to expect of people when everything is built in such a way that if you do that, how do you live? How do you eat? They keep a
Interesting.
roof over your head. You know what I mean? Like it is not deciding that you were going to be anti-capitalist, anti-imperialism, anti-racist, all of those things. None of that benefits the system that we live in. None of it benefits the system we live in.
But then I wonder how. Yeah, I mean, I know exactly where you're coming from, and in fact, one of the big issues is yeah, I'm just trying to think, yeah, no, like, yes, we are in the conundrum.
It's a conundrum.
Because if you look at like Ralph Nader's like campaign, many of the people who like sabotaged his run were people like in his own like organizations, like his own like
Mm-hmm.
inner circles. And if you look at the poor plight of Julian Assange, many of the people who actually should have been defending him from the get-go were the very people that actually threw him under the bus, or they were
Mm-hmm.
people who have to shit on the guy before defending him. And
Mm-hmm.
as
And even when even think like thinking about Julian Assange, right? And all of the attention it gets, right? And not that it shouldn't get the attention, right? But why Julian Assange and not Mumia Jamal, right? Like why, right? Because no one wants to point out the fact that this is a system that has worked against its own citizens forever,
yeah,
right? This is not new, right? Like journalists in jail is not new, right? And but this is all part of the same problem, right? It is literally everything is happening in a way to keep people focused on like one thing or what they think is an abstract thing, or look at this over there and not pay attention to like your own immediate what is happening around you that maybe you could have an effect on if you decided to actively work against it. But deciding to actively work against it, it literally could be a danger to your being able to just walk through life, right? Like to just live like you want to live, to be able to, go see a play because you want to go see it, right? So it it requires a little bit of courage, right?
yeah,
And it requires a little bit of like, I realize this could be a problem down the road, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's something that needs to be done, right? Like it's okay to be scared of something, but also of the belief that you shouldn't be a coward about things either. And it's a hard ask to do that. Like it's not an easy thing to ask people to do. Um, and I'm by no means like I'm a coward about a bunch of things because I'm like, I just simply am unwilling to lose that level of freedom, right? Um, so I'm gonna do certain things because I feel like I can push this envelope in this way, right? And present like a fact or be loud and boisterous about this particular thing or be a voice about this thing. But you know, I don't I don't know that I would do anything that I know will absolutely land me in a situation where I am going to be in danger, right? Like I can't say for certain what would happen. I haven't been in that situation to date, right? Like I don't know. I hear a few times since George Floyd was murdered, I've heard conversations about what would you have done if you were standing there, right? It's,
Yeah.
if you've ever watched the Pendleton 2 documentary, for example, they talk a lot about this, like, because the Pendleton 2 are still in prison because they decided not to sit back and watch correction officers kill another inmate, right? So you're standing there and you know this man is about to die, right? Are you willing to put yourself in a position where you might get arrested, you might get killed, you might get hurt, but maybe George Floyd lives, versus there being a videotape of him dying, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, no, it's interesting. That's very
it's
much
an
like the
right. And it's an intense question because I don't know that anyone can answer it unless they have to live it, right? It's very easy in hindsight to be like, oh, well, I definitely would have said something. Well, a lot of people said something, but saying something didn't stop them from killing George Floyd. Like, if you watch that video, there were a lot of people saying something. No, you know, it wasn't like silently watching this thing happen, but the physical moving to stop it, right? Like the minute somebody went to make a motion and the officers responded to that person making a motion, right? They step back, right? And I'm not saying those people are wrong because, again, I don't know how I would have reacted had I been in that particular situation. But that's the thing that everyone, right? I feel like a lot of people are struggling with that, right? Like, if I go to work and I dare to speak on Israel and Palestine, right? I might lose my job. But am I willing to do that anyway? Because it's the right thing to do, right? Because really people shouldn't be silent on it, because the silence on it is why it's still happening, right?
exactly.
But it's a hard ask. It really is a hard ask. And you know, it's very difficult for me as a person with, you know, I have a house, I have a job, I have a child, I have a husband, I have, you know, bills and a mortgage, and, you know, got to get gas in the car, and we have to eat, and we, you know, all the things. I know that I also don't want to lose the ability to keep these things, right? So how can I say to somebody like, that's whack that you're not gonna speak up, right? Like,
Yeah.
who am I to do that, right? Like,
But
you
then
know,
I
I
want, but then I wonder. Okay, so hypothetically, let's fast forward to this ridiculous November election. One of the two plutocrats, arch racists, arch imperialists,
mhm.
wins Biden versus Trump. I wonder then, if because a lot because we like to say to people who keep voting Democrats that it's insane that you guys keep voting Democrats expecting different results. That's insanity. But then they could also say the same thing about us, like saying, well, why are you voting for a third or a fourth or a fifth left party candidate who has no chances when you people should be actually I guess if we can't beat them, join them, but join them in
Mhm.
the hopes that we actually can make the Democrats into a Sanders Green PSL type of party. And I think that goes back to the other question listen, Black Panther elders and so forth. I know you guys think that the trying to reform the Constitution is rotten, but isn't that really our only game in town, in the hopes that we can build a much more just society?
So I would prefer to go insane trying to do the right thing over and over again than going insane knowing that I'm doing the wrong thing. Right.
Signing
So,
up, in other words, signing up to join the Democrats, knowing that
right.
you're going to
So,
be dealing with
no,
people
like, you know, there is no win with them. right? For all the we're going to push Biden left and like none of it happened. None of the promises happened. They were never going to happen, but they didn't happen, right? And so many of the policies that are most detrimental to people are policies that go in place and remain in place no matter which one of those two parties are in control. So to me, always voting for a non-duopoly candidate in an attempt to break the duopoly, even knowing that it might not work, is at least me knowing that I'm not just going to go along with this system and just be party to what is already happening. And I would much rather be on that side of the insanity loop than on the insanity loop of I'm going to keep supporting these people who have no vested interest in the benefits of regular working people and hope that somebody along the way will be able to change them. Like I have no interest in participating in that side of the loop. Like at all. Like zero, just
Exactly.
none, not doing it.
And I guess I would just say, yeah, I think, whatever focus an activist does, like if your immediate concern is, racial justice, and that's the Black and Latinx community, and that's your immediate Black and Latinx community, by all means do it. But then yeah, I would just say, to some of the good, white leftists, like, get involved, in constitutional reforms in the hopes that, in other words, it's all hands on deck. And I guess, I would just encourage everybody to keep keep trying to do what they're doing. But boy, we have unfortunately, a lot of work cut out for us, right?
There is and it's, like I said, it's I think the hardest thing really is getting people to want to to learn, right? To want to read, to want, because who has time for it, right? On top of everything else that you get out of the system, you are also bogged down with the need to survive, right? So if you're working two jobs, and or if you have multiple kids, or if you're sick, or if you're disabled, you like there's so many things that can create a situation in which you don't have the capacity to be like out organizing, right? Or
Yeah.
out doing the thing, or whatever have you, because it's just difficult to do. Like I have time for some of this stuff, and I have a stack of books that I'm still trying to get through because I really want to have like a deeper understanding of a lot of things, but it's hard to do. Like it's hard to say I'm going to stop and I'm going to sit down and I'm going to read, whatever book is going to give you some understanding of anything, right? Um so it's a difficult task, but again, the system creates that, right? We live in a place where, in pursuit of the simple things of life, in order to make you comfortable, you have to work 2 and 3 jobs in order to maintain it, right? Like
Yeah.
we don't, so the system is also set up to have you feeling like I don't have time to be doing this stuff to break this system because I'm trying to survive within it. But that's also intentional. So it's a tough, I mean, this whole place, it's it makes you weary,
Yeah, I
right?
can imagine.
But that's how the system wants you tired and bogged down, and like I just want to get some rest before I have to get up for my next job. So like that's what it wants, because if you're too busy trying to survive, you don't have time to break the thing that has put you in a situation in which all you have time for is to survive. It's the never ending it's never ending. Like the system literally created a problem, and in creating that problem, you're constant trying to fix the problem it created for you, means you can't ever break the thing that caused the problem to happen to begin with. It's a horrifying reality. horrifying, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I think when the election happens, I definitely need to have you and somebody else from BPM over to think of like, where, what does the left, where does the left go from here? Because obviously, I would say to any of my viewers and whatnot, go vote for PSL, go vote for the GPC, because you're going to feel much. Go vote for the Green Party, because you'll at least feel consciously. Your conscience is going to feel much better than just continuing on with the duopoly. But there does need to be like a huge plan of like, where do we go from here, because this vicious cycle does have to end. But before I let you go, it's it's our it's that time again where we do the questionnaire that was started by by Marcel Proust, and later later the French broadcaster Bernard Pivot, later my hero, the late great James Lipton. So Renee, it's your turn to do this. So Renee, what is your favorite word?
We're gonna go today with conundrum.
Conundrum. Okay. What's your least favorite word?
Struggle.
Okay, then what turns you on spiritually, psychologically, or emotionally?
My family.
Then what turns you off then?
Politics.
Then yeah, exactly. Then what sound or noise do you love?
The sound of the ocean.
Then many people love the sound of the ocean on this show. Then what sound or noise do you dislike then?
What grates on me? Dripping.
Dripping? Like what kind of like?
Yeah, like a crack in the ceiling. Like that drip sound of like, oh, where's that coming from? I think that's in part like my own, you live in a place where sometimes things start dripping and you're like, oh shit, where's that coming from?
Then what's your favorite curse word?
Yeah, I gotta say the F word's pretty
Exactly.
It has multiple uses.
Exactly. That is what I love about it. Then, what profession, if you weren't doing the stuff you do, being an independent journalist, being an activist, being an educator, so if you weren't doing that, what profession would you love to do?
So it's funny because I always wish I could have been an architect, because that's actually what I started out in life wanting to do. But after doing so much and having so many conversations, if I could do anything, I actually think I'd go to law school.
Really? Okay. No problem. Hey, we could use more people power lawyers. So and then what profession would you absolutely not want to do under any circumstances? Police.
Nope.
We could use more.
No kind of law enforcement ever.
And final question is, yes, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say as you arrive at the pearly gates? And even if you're an atheist, please do answer the question.
Good job.
Just a simple
literally.
Good job.
Good job.
Well, Renee, you always do a good job, and keep on doing the great work you do. We were joined on this edition of 1+1 with Renee Johnston, part of Black Power Media. Folks, check out Black Power Media. Check out Renee's work there, and donate generously to Black Power Media. And Renee, I hope this will be the first of yes, I hope this will be the first of many conversations, both on and off the air. But keep up the great work, and you give my best to the Black Power Media family. All right.
Will do, Youri. Thanks so much, Youri, for inviting me and for being so generous and able to work around my crazy schedule. So I appreciate
Likewise,
you.
Likewise. It was an honor.
All right. Have a good one.